This is Bruce Friedman of Adult Site Broker, and welcome to Adult Site Broker Talk, where each week we interview one of the movers and shakers of the adult industry, and we give you a tip on buying and selling websites. This week we'll be speaking with Todd Spaits of YanksCash. Adult Site Broker is proud to announce the launch of our new website, Adult Site Broker 3.0, at adultsitebroker.com. The look and feel of the new site is nice and up to date and easier to navigate. The new site also has links to our affiliate program, ASB Cash, and our new blog. Speaking of ASB Cash, we've doubled our affiliate payouts. Now, when you refer sellers or buyers to us at Adult Site Broker, you're going to receive 20% of our broker commission on any and all sales that result from that referral for life. You can either place a link to us on your site or refer buyers and sellers through an email introduction. ASB Cash is the first affiliate program for an adult website brokerage. Check out asbcash.com for more details and to sign up. Now let's feature our property of the week that's for sale at Adult Site Broker. We're proud to offer for sale a streaming network of sites for independent performers. Most of the traffic comes from North America. It's the Shopify of streaming video and offers turnkey streaming sites to content creators. Creators provide some information about their brand, choose a look and feel, upload their images and videos, and they launch their streaming site on the domain of their choice in minutes. The platform provides everything creators need, from customer support to payment processing, so creators can focus on managing their content and marketing their site. The platform can also generate revenue from ads on free content, as well as subscriptions to premium content. The platform uses AWS cloud technology to stream live and on-demand content around the world. The sale also includes a mainstream platform. The content is sold on a monthly subscription basis. The code was developed in-house by their team of engineers. This is a great opportunity to enter the exciting world of live streaming video for a modest cost. Platforms like this cost a lot more to build from scratch, only $540,000. Now time for this week's interview. My guest today on Adult Site Broker Talk is Todd Spaits of YanksCash. Todd, thanks for being with us today on Adult Site Broker Talk.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. It's been a bit of time that it took to get you on, but I guess cross-continent move will cause some delays.
Yeah. We just Billy and I just relocated from Arizona to Valencia, Spain. The process was about 4 months with getting furniture, shipped over, and it was an ordeal. But now we are fully moved in, and it's great.
Awesome. Now, Todd is a 20-year veteran of the industry, co-founder of YanksCash, and its flagship site, Yanks.com. Todd holds an MBA from the University of Washington. Not too many MBAs in our industry. He's an award-winning, classically trained French chef, and he's the author of the soon-to-be-published book, American Orgasm, the True Story of an Ethical Pornographer. YanksCash and its flagship site, Yanks.com, was founded in 2002 in San Diego on the idea that solo girl and girl-girl porn could be different. A Yank shoot is less scripted, safer, and focused on the sexual pleasure of the creators for the ultimate pleasure of the viewer. Makes sense. This has been accomplished by pioneering 20 years ago many of the creator-centric policies that are commonplace today. A Yank shoot isn't the direction of a sexual interaction. It's always been a collaboration between their site and the model to create a sexual experience to be shared with their members. On the business side, YanksCash has a bulletproof reputation and has always been a leader in pushing for a safer, more ethical industry. So, Todd, let's talk some more about your move. Going from Arizona to Valencia, Spain. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, thanks. So we had lived in Valencia from 2014 to 2018, and then we left to go. Billy and I both left to go to cooking school in Paris, and we both went to Le Cordon Bleu.
Yeah,
came back to. We actually decided to move from Spain back to the States in early 2020, and hit COVID right smack in the middle of our move.
Welcome home.
Oh yeah. So we actually got stuck in the UK. We were supposed to take the Queen Elizabeth II, I believe,
Mm,
QE2, across from Southampton to New York, but it got
hmm.
canceled because of COVID.
Right.
We were doing that because we had to have our dog with us.
Oh, yeah.
And so we just got stuck in the UK for 6 months. When our visa ran out there, we drove from Oxford to Naxos in Greece.
Hmm.
Drove and took ferries. Kind of hit out there for 3 months. Then COVID still wasn't letting up during the summer. Then we drove from Naxos, Greece, to Scotland, Edinburgh. We're there another 4 months before we could eventually get back to the States.
Jeez.
And so yeah, it's been the last 3 years have been quite a journey.
For everybody, I think. So tell us how you got started in the industry.
Billy and I, she's my partner, who most people in the industry know of. She doesn't go to a ton of shows, but
Hmm.
she used to. We were living in San Diego in 2000, 2001, 2002, and we were both bartending at a place called On Broadway Event Center, which was really one of the biggest and most popular nightclubs in all of Southern California at the time.
Hmm.
And we were just looking for something to do. I mean, we were working 2 days a week, making killer money,
Hmm.
and I've always had this idea of, the internet, which was still fairly new, and
Hmm.
porn is just a great way to make money.
Absolutely.
So one day I kind of pulled her aside and I said, "Hey, I've got this idea." And the idea was essentially I used to watch Ed Powers videos, and I love Ed, and I love the way he did things by doing an interview and talking to the girls. And he sort of had a really good rapport with them. And then the difference between Ed Powers videos is then he'd eventually get on the bed with he'd have his just black socks on and he'd have sex with the girl. And that kind of ruined it for me. But I really liked the part. Yeah, I
Was it
couldn't.
was it him or the Black Sox?
It was, well, I'd say both, but yeah, the kind of pale white skin and the black socks were a bit much. And I met Ed, and he's a really nice guy. So
Yeah.
no offense to him, but um, but I loved the way he did it, where he just built this rapport with the girls, and he'd usually have them start out masturbating, and they seemed to be really
Mhm.
comfortable, and they seemed to be actually enjoying themselves before he'd kind of jump on the bed. Now I don't blame him for doing that because he's got a hot
Sure.
girl there masturbating, so it's
Yeah.
his genre. But
Sure.
I just thought that hey, if you just were able to build that kind of rapport with the girl and then let them do that and just record it without a lot of direction and just kind of let that play out, it'd be content that people would really like. So I ran that idea by Billy, and she pretty much was like, "Do you think it'll work and make money?" And I'm like, "Yep, I do." And so we really just jumped in. We didn't have, we're not from a technical background. We, I'm not a programmer, a developer. I'm not a photographer, a videographer. I didn't have that background either.
That makes two of us.
Yeah. So we just jumped in, bought a camera, bought a video camera, a still camera, figured out lighting, figured out audio, figured out how to build web pages. We, didn't have a lot of money. So we built our actual, our editing machine from
Mhm.
scratch, just going to Fry's electronics store in Southern California and just putting together the
Sure.
computers and just did everything from the ground up.
Wow. It's been quite a success story, Yanks Cash. I mean, to be around as long as you guys have, that's got to be very gratifying.
Yeah, it's been an interesting ride because in a lot of ways, when we started, we had a great following, but it was kind of niche. But the dedication to it was really was I mean, people were very dedicated to the content, and we had a lot of
Mhm.
fans.
Right.
At the same time, we were never really the flavor of the month. I mean, we weren't, we didn't have a Tawny Stone like Lightspeed did, or
Mhm. Right.
and Silver Cash and Top Cash and all these
Mhm.
big massive programs
Yeah.
that kind of came along. We started in 2002, and a lot of those programs are just 2 years ahead of us.
Mhm.
And that 2 years combined with them kind of pursuing a little bit more mainstream porn with lesbian and teen and things of that nature, they got a little bit ahead of us.
Sure.
But what's kind of nice is I think that just the dedication we've had from our fans for so long, we were able to just keep going. And even when the industry's had its ups and downs, that dedication of our fans has kept us going.
Right. Well, you mentioned those other programs. I mean, I don't think any of those are still around, and you are.
No, no, and I mean, they all did well. And I think when
Sure, in their
the
day,
financial
right?
crisis hit and Pornhub came along, I think a lot of those guys were able to just take their cash and run. And so,
Sure.
it's definitely impressive.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there is some gratification in still being here and still being, one of the few pay sites that go to shows, and that's a market that seems to be really coming back though lately, which is nice. But yeah, it's very gratifying.
So, in your mind, do you think content is king or is traffic king?
I always look at it two ways. I mean, they obviously it's a chicken and egg situation because they kind of rely on each other.
Of course.
But the way I kind of think about it is, if you're going to a location, if you're going to out to eat to a really great restaurant, you need to drive to get there. So the road is the traffic, and the content is the food you eat there. When
Hmm.
it's all said and done, though, you remember the meal you had. You don't remember the drive there. The drive there is necessary, and traffic's necessary, but I do think content is king, and I always think that the state of the industry can really kind of boils down to that. I mean, when traffic is prioritized, when you go to a show and it's just 1,000 companies cycling around the same traffic, the industry is really not in a good state. It's kind of a bullshit. It's not a bullshit tactic, but it's just the industry is not in a very healthy state. But when content really becomes the focus again, and the quality of the content and the resolution of the content, and the creators and the models are being compensated well, I think that's a healthy industry. So that's where I really just lean towards making content a priority.
What would it take to make the industry healthier? Because you said the content should be the priority. And I agree. I mean, if you're not doing something different, if you're not doing something that people want, then they're just going to go to the tubes and get free porn.
I mean, the first thing I always really lean hard into is leadership in this industry,
Hmm.
and really the lack of leadership. I did a lot of research and a lot of interviews for my book. And one of
Right.
the things I always asked people was, when you've been involved in other industry, while obviously the bottom line is important in making money, I always ask them if those other industries that they've been involved in were the same way in prioritizing the health of their industry and thinking long term. And without exception, they've always said, yeah, like I was from the restaurant industry, or I was from this, manufacturing or something. And while the bottom line was always important, the company I worked for always contributed to the industry in a way that the industry was thinking long term and its own health, and 10 years and 20 years down the line.
Right.
And that always takes leadership. So while I look at this industry right now, and the three, probably the tubes being the mind geek and X videos and X
Hmm.
hamster,
Right.
which I work with all of them,
Sure.
and I think they're coming around.
Yes.
They're still not stepping up to the plate in a big way as leaders. I mean, for one, I've never, and maybe this has happened, but I've never seen the CEO or the operations officer, or a representative from each of those companies on one panel in Vegas or at LA or somewhere, and,
Interesting.
and
You're
just
right.
taking questions and just talking. And that
Yeah.
to me that's obscene. I mean, that's really bizarre to me that the
Agreed.
three biggest players can't be in the same room and just talk about the state of the industry.
Yeah. I get, I mean, XN and XX, I don't see them at
Yeah.
all, not, nor any of their people. You see people from MindGeek from time to time, and you certainly see people from Gamma. But as far as and you do see people from X Hamster, I will say that, and the CEO from X Hamster does go to shows in Europe.
Like I said, I work with all of them, and I think I really I love X Hamster. I've got a really good rep now at each of the three companies, and I
Yep.
talk to them weekly, and they are coming around, but they're also seemingly a little bit scared of just being out in front, and they shouldn't be.
Hmm.
They should be a little more
Yeah.
vocal.
Right.
They should get in the same room together and talk about some stuff.
I think that would be great. It's something that maybe we should call for.
I
Hopefully,
mean,
they're
I
listening.
think we should. Yeah, I mean, I would love that. I mean, I think that would be the most amazing panel at any of the shows or all the shows if one representative from all three of them sat, in front of the industry and allowed some questions,
Hmm.
and they even came up with some guidelines. I mean, because
Right.
obviously when you look at the trajectory of the tubes, they acquired a lot of content. Um,
Hmm.
and they were able to give that away for free. And in the process, they destroyed their own supply chain by
It's true.
putting so many pay sites out of business. And then what happened is the content that was just buried in there was very problematic, which I think the entire industry always knew. And now they're really all, doing a hard pivot back to, hey, holy cow, like you guys make good content, help us, and we are, but it's still, I think the messaging is still a bit strained and the leadership's still a bit weak
It's true.
all through.
So you're on a lot of state of the industry panels. Give me a couple words on how you describe the state of the industry.
Well, I mean, so I already kind of touched on some of that, but I always try to boil some things down, and one of the way, so whenever I do the state of the industry panel, and I like moderating them because it allows me I like being on panels because it allows me to answer questions that obviously self promote Yanks, but that
Yep.
also just self promote my ethics and my vision of the industry. When I
Right.
moderate a panel, it's even better because I can create the questions and then, put my sort of vision in front of others to comment on or pivot on. So whenever I do a state of the industry, I sort of open with the same statement. And that statement is that if you really boil down this transaction, it's essentially, a person, man, woman, taking, an erotic photo of another person and then selling it to a third party. The model can take a selfie and do it. A series of photos as a video, whether it's live or streaming. Like that's just the basic, transaction. That's the core transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you look at the health of that core transaction, it just says everything you need to know about the industry. I mean,
Yep.
if somebody can do that successfully and pay their bills and do well, and they're motivated, they're making enough profit to be motivated by that process, then the state of the industry is good. When that core transaction is threatened, then the state of the industry is poor. And so that's what I always think is, if I got X Hamster, X Videos, and MindGeek in a room together in front of the industry, that's what my first question would be is like, what are the guidelines that you three can all agree on that you could lead to protect that core transaction? And look at the players out there who are not protecting that core transaction, and let's make sure we're calling them out and we're cutting off the supply of money, holding them to a set of core values that this industry can agree on.
Yeah. So along with that, you're often preaching about ethics in our industry. How should we become more ethical?
I mean, I think it's a lot of like, know your customer. I go back and forth on just like naming names, but I look at some of the bigger link lists out there, something like the Porn Dude,
Mm-hmm.
and you look at that site, and what you see is hundreds of companies that have won awards from Why Not, from XBiz, from AVN,
Mm-hmm.
and then listed on those pages are also file lockers and torrents and tubes
Mm.
that are just steal content from creators and from pay sites. And so a simple knowing your customer, that guy gets paid through affiliates. He gets paid by promoting cams. If you're a cam company, a StreamMate and a ChatterBait, you shouldn't be subsidizing a list like that if it's also linking to other sites that are helping
That are
to,
thieves. Yeah.
people to steal from
Right.
your other clients.
Sure.
I think one of the things that I do preach, and sometimes people get frustrated, but one of my biggest pet peeves is I think that people tend to think that because I preach or because I'm ethical that I'm naive. And I understand that there's money involved, and I understand the SEO aspects, and I understand all that, but it's money, but it's just about who gets the money.
Yep.
Nobody that gets on their computer to kind of rub one out and goes to like the Porn Dude, if he's not there anymore, that guy's not putting his dick away and going to the gym. He's just going to find something else.
Of course.
Yeah. So, I mean, if this industry rooted out the people that were making the money that shouldn't be and just directed it to the right hands, it's the same amount of money. It's just who
Right.
gets it. And
Very
it's not that hard.
true. And it's not just review sites. Okay. There are traffic companies that buy and sell traffic from people who steal content.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that to me, that's not okay. And those people should be called out.
Yeah, I mean, and the traffic, and that's the thing is the traffic from those companies it'll just exist somewhere else. I mean, that's the thing. The traffic. It's just not going to go away because I mean, it's sex. I mean, sex. I mean, people are gonna, if somebody wants to get a beer, they're going to get a beer if there's bars available. I mean, you got to make sure the right people own them, you know?
Right. Sure. So, what do you believe the biggest challenge is facing our industry?
I mean, it's just leadership. You know, I know so many people that I would say are just really good people in this industry, but they don't have a lot of power individually, and we can never seem to get together to get enough power collectively. So I think it's leadership, and it shocked to me really in the 20 years that I've been in this business that I can't remember one single person that has really stepped up with power to be like, you know, let's do some good things. Not one. I mean, not one. I
Hmm.
think, you know, when I look back when I started, Why Not Bob was a
Hmm.
really good friend to me,
Me too.
and yeah, and he sort of seemed to, you know, and he was an ethical guy,
Sure.
and he seemed to be able to have that kind of presence
Hmm.
for a while. But then I
Hmm.
think, you know, he kind of fell out, you know, but somebody like that, and, you know, and again, he didn't have enough power and enough traffic at that time, even then.
No, that's true.
But you
That's
know, I think he was so somebody like that, I think with a real presence is would be really nice to see. And so I think leadership is the biggest thing this industry really needs.
well, maybe it needs to be you.
I mean, I would love to be that. You know, again, the challenge there is that, you know, I think you really, you know, you need some power behind it, and power is kind of money.
Well,
You
I
know, all
mean,
good and well, but
right, right. You look at all the things the Free Speech Coalition does. Maybe that's something they should take on.
yeah, but you know, and those organizations are great too. But the challenge is that, you know, they do tend to have very, you know, high level sponsors, and then they're kind of limited to how they can criticize them. I criticize some of the bigger players in this industry because I'd like to see them do more, but I don't think we need to go after them. I just think there needs to be pressure for them to be the best they can, be better. You know, so I think those bigger organizations do rely on so much funding from those big players that they do have to back off with any criticism.
It's very true because they survive on sponsorships.
Yeah, they do. They do.
So you've been at this a while, obviously. Who are three people in the industry you respect? Well, besides myself, of course.
um, you know, a couple of so there's three people that I've had really great conversations with, and it's Steve from Groovy, who I just think
Yes,
he's just a really stand up guy. I love him.
agreed.
Um, Sam Rakowski's a really good friend from Mr. Skin, and
Yep.
I really respect the way he does things. And
Hmm.
you know, kind of coming back onto the scene a bit because he owns creampie.com now is Sean.
Oh yeah,
He's a really interesting and good person. I've spent a number of hours with him on the phone just talking and riffing, going back and forth. Good guy.
I would agree wholeheartedly on those three. Those are three of the best people in the industry. There's no two ways about it. So now you recently wrote a book, as we mentioned at the top, American Orgasm: The Story of an Ethical Pornographer. Why don't you tell us about the journey and what prompted you to write a book?
So you know, it's not published. I hope to get it published this year. The book's written, and I'm just involved in rewrites. This year was a little tough because I lost my younger brother
Oh, I'm sorry.
to an addiction. Yeah,
Oh,
thank you. I
jeez.
appreciate that. And so it was just I really got off of writing, and it's I can write through a lot of different things, but I found myself really with a lot of lack of creativity when it comes to rewrites because it's just the rewrites are kind of brutal, just tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. So I hope to have that out this year. But kind of what prompted me to write it is really just looking at the role that YanksCash played is that it, you know, we were never really the flavor of the month, but we have and have now a nice amount of success. And so we were sort of like, you know, we were in the industry, we grew, you know, very organically, like so many companies, and we had, I think, a good view of that. So I wanted to write a book that wasn't just about the parties because I've read some accounts of the adult industry, you know, online, and you know they tend to really just talk about the shows, and then it's like while it's fun, I mean the shows are a blast. When every story is sort of like, you know, oh, I met so and so, we did a ton of cocaine, we fucked these chicks, and then you know, we slept and then did it again. I mean,
Boring.
it's yeah, it makes a great story, but once it's five, six, seven times, you're like, okay, cool, like that's cool for you, but it's not that interesting. So what I wanted to just really write about was the experience of even our first day of interviews,
Mm-hmm.
where we just put ads in the San Diego paper for girls to come by, at this Embassy Suites lobby in downtown San Diego.
Right.
Billy and I went, and we had no experience with cameras, video, still, tech, anything. And just seeing the girls that showed up and asked them why they were there and just figuring it all out. And so
Right.
I think the account of how that was in the early 2000s and what it's like to, do your first porn shoot, just grow in the industry, I thought that would be very interesting to people.
Mm-hmm.
One of my role models is Anthony Bourdain. And I
Oh
always
God.
thought that
Yeah.
Yanks had this
I bet. I
similarity.
bet as a chef, he must be. My God.
Oh yeah, I mean, I really connect with him in terms of
Mhm.
the travel. I love the
Yeah.
travel, and I travel a lot. And the chef, being a chef,
Yes.
and that's why I love to write. I love his style.
Hmm.
Um, and I think what I kind of shared, the book that I'm writing, I want it to be kind of regarded in that way. And I think Anthony
Hmm.
Bourdain was interesting because while he was a good chef and was successful,
Hmm.
he also wasn't like a celebrity chef. So he
Right.
was very much like in that Yanks where he could look, he was in the middle, he was sort of witnessing the
Hmm.
restaurant industry and wrote the real story of it. Whereas I kind of feel like that's what we've been witnessing the adult industry without being on top of it necessarily, but certainly
Hmm.
not being at the bottom of it either, a really
Yeah.
good wholesome experience.
Yeah. I really miss the guy. It was really tragic that he took his own
Terrible.
life. It was a shock to everybody, I think.
Yeah.
And
Terrible.
God, I used to love his show. His show was amazing, just amazing.
It's
And
so good.
he had so much more to give.
I know,
Um,
and it's the saddest thing how it's just with something like that. It's a moment of sadness where he just
yeah.
wasn't in the right spot, and
Yeah.
there wasn't somebody by him, and
Yeah.
because man,
Yeah. So growing up, living in San Diego all those years, you and Bob were neighbors.
oh yeah, like I mean, it was really bizarre because he literally lived like I think 2.5 miles from me.
Wow.
And when we started in the industry, I didn't know, that's another thing too. Like I, wrote about this period where we started in the
Hmm.
industry and we didn't know anybody. Like we didn't know
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah.
And eventually this one guy, this one person we had that it was kind of helping us out with some things. Like, well, you got to meet Why Not Bob? Like, he is
Hmm.
the industry. And I'm
Yep.
like,
He
okay.
sure was. He sure was.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I finally actually met him at the Why Not show in Mexico. And yeah,
Hmm.
we became good friends,
Oh,
and he'd do
did we?
his.
Did you and I go to one of those at the same time? I think we did because I went to two or three of them.
It
I
must
think
have been because
so. I
I
think so.
did.
Yeah.
I think the
Those were
first one was
crazy.
in.
Those were
Oh my
those were
god!
just crazy.
Oh yeah.
I remember the first one I went to. We were drinking tequila on the bus on the way down from the airport, and I remember laying back on the bed of a pickup truck and falling asleep, and them having to wake me up because they were going to leave. And on that one, I roomed with Alex Ryulan.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, there wasn't a sober moment. Not a sober moment. In fact, I need to get that dude on the podcast. He's been around.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No, those shows
Bob
are
was a
awesome.
mentor. Yeah, Bob was a mentor for me too. And he was the first person I actually met in the industry because I had bought his audio program. Maybe it was a video program. I don't remember, about starting sites. And of course, I had already fucked everything up by the time I got it. But that's another story. I was a terrible, terrible site owner. But I remember Bob. My first show was Vegas, and Bob was with Doug Wicks, and when he was with CC Bill, and it was like Bob says, "Well, meet us in the bar over at Circus Circus." So actually, Doug was the first one I met because Bob wasn't there yet. But then Bob showed up, and I'm probably one of the few people in the industry that's still in touch with Bob. So
Oh, are you? Yeah, I lost touch with them.
I can give you his information, no problem. You know, he's in the
Yeah.
insurance business now, right?
I thought so. He's living in Florida,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he was. I mean, it was funny because we used to when he was drinking. I think he quit now, but
Yeah.
we, after the Hump Day radio show, I'd meet him at his local bar, and I
Yeah.
mean, we would just get hammered and then play Call of Duty on the Why Not servers, which was really fun.
So now you're probably the only award-winning, classically trained fresh French, I'm going to get that right, chef in the industry. So tell us a little bit about that accomplishment.
I think so. I mean, maybe, I told you that, so I hope I'm not wrong. But yeah, so, in 2018, we kind of took a little bit of a break from the sites, and I wanted to write the book. And then also, it was my dream to go to cooking school. And so I wanted to go to Le Cordon Bleu, in Paris. And to me, that was just the dream to do.
Sure.
And Billy, who's she doesn't really like to cook that much, but she's like, I think I'd like to do something completely challenging like this.
Hmm.
So she enrolled in the patisserie diploma program, and I did the cuisine, so on the savory side. And it's a
Mhm.
9-month program. Um,
Right.
Pretty intense, 30-35 hours a week,
Jeez.
um, with really some of the best chefs in the world.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was just, so we were in Paris for a full year. I did a
Hmm.
3-month internship at a Michelin starred steakhouse in Paris.
Wow.
And it was just an absolutely, incredible experience. And
Yeah.
I had the opportunity there was a mystery box style 3-day cooking contest
Hmm.
that was at Versailles, and
Hmm.
I had entered, and I won over three
Hmm.
days, which kind of
Wow.
surprised me. But it was sort of a French Caribbean cooking contest,
Interesting.
um, and
Getting
called the
hungry.
Trophy. Yeah, Trophy Babette. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was just an amazing experience, and it's actually something that probably I'm thinking about, and now that I'm settled here, that at the next one of the next upcoming TES is not the Lisbon one because I couldn't get it in time.
Mm.
But I think I wanted to start doing kind of a chef's table at the shows.
Oh, that's cool.
Um,
You're gonna be in Lisbon, right?
yeah, I'll be in Lisbon. I will
Okay,
be in
good.
Lisbon.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. No,
Well, you will.
you don't oh yeah, you don't have too
Oh,
far to
awesome.
come. Just for the sake of a disclaimer, this might not run before that,
Yeah.
but we'll have had a really good time. What really bums me out, another thing about the pandemic that bums me out, I wanted to come taste your cooking, but with the pandemic and everything, by the time I got there, I missed you, which really bummed me out. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so back to the business. Do you see pay sites trending up or trending down?
I mean, I definitely see them trending up. I mean, I think the power dynamics has shifted to creators. You've got all the girls that are, in OnlyFans, but I also believe that, it's necessary to have brands involved,
Hmm.
brands like Yanks and other pay sites,
Yep.
in that mix in some way. And that I think that there's going to be an evolution into what a pay site is,
Hmm.
and there's going to be other products coming along. But
Interesting.
I believe that brands like Yanks are going to play a big role in it. So I believe that the pay site being just where you would find our presence, the
Hmm.
most concentrated, will still exist. And I believe that has to do with the fact that the tubes now realize that they can't kill their supply chain,
True.
and they're all very quickly shifting towards premium models and
Yep.
pay per view and
Hmm.
mini memberships in their sites, as opposed to free content that they can't control. So
Hmm.
that's the other thing too, is I think that the tube sites are recognizing the value of the fact that when you have, they can't be the gatekeepers of 100 million videos,
Right.
because the bad stuff's going to slip in.
Mastercard and Visa told them that.
Well, yeah, and they should have known that. I mean, that's the thing, is
Absolutely. Absolutely.
this industry
Absolutely.
should have known that. No matter, I mean, those companies aren't big enough to be the gatekeepers of 100 million videos, and
No.
so bad stuff's going to slip in. And so the best way to do that is to establish pay site owners and content producers and creators as the
Hmm.
gateway that gives them the content that they can trust.
Right.
And this is, that's a leadership issue, is that
Hmm.
I see a lot of people that bitch about, the New York Times writer exposing Pornhub, and while I certainly don't, like I said, I work with Pornhub, I wouldn't want them to hear this and be like, oh, let's not work
Mm.
with Todd anymore and
Yeah.
Yanks. But I mean, I don't know that what the New York Times exposed was something this whole industry knew for a decade. It's
Oh,
just not
sure.
shocking, and so we had ample opportunity to fix that, and we didn't, and they didn't,
Right.
and so that's what happens. So now, do we
Hmm.
fix the next things that we know about?
Right. Like age verification. And I've felt for a long time that the adult industry should come up as a whole with an age verification method that everybody accepts. If they do that, then governments aren't going to tell them what to do.
Yeah, I mean, the more self-regulation we can do, or at least, and that's it. It's like, again, it's like, oh, the New York Times are they're hunting and they're after us, and the Christian right is after us,
Well,
and
they kind of are, but
they
that's another
are for
story.
sure. But we
Mhm.
give them, we make ourselves open to it, and
No, you're
so
right.
exactly what you said, like do something where it's age verification or just really self-police so that you can stand up and be like, hey, we're doing more than other industries are,
Right.
and we're not.
Well, we certainly, through ASACP, we do a lot,
Yeah.
for protection of children. But you're right, we could certainly do more. So, how do you view that power dynamic in terms of content creators? Content creators certainly have the power at this point, wouldn't you say?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's something that it's really interesting because a number of years ago, I tried to launch a program where models could submit their videos to Yanks, and
Hmm.
we had a very short checklist of what they needed to do to submit their videos. We'd set up a profile page on Yanks. We would pay them a little less because they didn't have to travel or anything, and they do it at home, so the quality wasn't quite there.
Hmm.
And it really just never took off, but it didn't really work because at the time there were some people that didn't have a good camera, or their smartphone was older
Sure.
and it just didn't capture good camera or a good quality content.
Right.
But now that's possible, and so I
Sure.
think the creators, they've realized that they can make money on their own. Mostly, I think a lot of those
Yeah.
girls too. Also, I see a lot of girls with pay sites as well. We
Hmm.
have we have creators writing us all the time now that they just want to give us content to put on Yanks so
Hmm.
that I can send traffic from our members area back out to their OnlyFans and back out to their page and their model
Sure.
hub and all that. And so it's really nice that now it's not just about the money; it's about them kind of taking control and ownership of the traffic as well.
Sure.
Where I think brands come into it though as well is that to be a creator, the barriers to entry are very low, and
Yep.
models do float in and out of the industry. I mean, a girl will come in, she'll make a little money, then she'll leave. So there's not a lot of stability to that, and it's a lot of churn. And
Hmm.
so I think that's where brands really can help in paying in providing the stability between the distribution channels like the tubes and the
Hmm.
churn of the creators themselves.
Sure. Now, what do you believe the future holds for VR and AR?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we're now, and I don't know what programs will be launched by the time this airs or not, but we're working on a creator platform for Yanks, not a platform, but a
Nice.
creator platform within Yanks. Not the
Hmm.
same as an OnlyFans, just more of a method for the girls to get traffic from our members area
Hmm.
and to be profiled on Yanks. So it's more of a, I guess, an advertising and a brand awareness for them through
Sure.
Yanks. But
Sure.
that's going to be launched. And then I think where we're actually going to create our own content in house is going to be just purely VR.
Hmm.
And VR is interesting because I think that a lot of the industry doesn't, they're like, okay, VR is dead. And they say that VR is dead just because
Hmm.
it didn't blow up the way everything does. And I think in this industry, if something doesn't go from 0 to 1,000 in 2 days,
Right.
it's shit,
Right. Sure.
but when I look at my VR content, if when I look at the places where I'm selling like pay per view and different VOD platforms, a VR video makes on average 5 to 6 times what a Yanks flat video does or a Yanks 2D.
Jeez.
I
Wow.
mean, so and once you make the initial investment of the camera, which is not that big of a deal, and have an editor, the cost of producing the VR versus the 2D isn't really that big of a deal.
Sure.
So and I love especially because Yanks, because it's girl and it's solo girl, it's
Hmm.
pretty easy to capture it well in VR.
Right.
So I mean that's where our focus is. And I think that it's going to just slowly build. Obviously,
Hmm.
VR and AR will go somewhere at some point, whether
Sure.
I don't think it's necessarily Zuckerberg's idea of the metaverse,
Hmm.
But 100 years from now, there's certainly going to be contact lenses you have in that are AR.
Oh,
I mean, that's
yeah.
just
Well,
that's
I
what's going to
think,
be. So it's a matter
yeah,
of when.
I think when Apple comes out with their AR device is when it's going to blow up. Personally,
Yeah, and
AR
that.
glasses, and we know they're
Yep.
working on them.
Yeah. And so that'll be cool. And I just got the Meta Quest 2 because I had
Mm,
taken some time off of VR, and I was blown away by the difference between the first version of Oculus, which I have as well,
hmm
and the Meta Quest.
mm,
And I
interesting.
don't spend. I think that there's things too where it's like I could sit and read my phone for hours and hours, and I'll be on my computer for hours and hours, and I'm not in
All
my
of us.
VR headset for hours and hours.
Yeah, yeah.
But when I do, I really enjoy it.
Hmm, interesting. Yeah, I haven't consumed much VR content, to be honest. I bought a pretty nice VR headset, but yeah, it's kind of gathering dust, unfortunately. But I got to have it because in my position, I have to be able to view all content. So,
Yeah.
and I've never been a person who views porn when I'm not working, pretty much. But every once in a while, I come upon something and go, that's nice.
Yeah.
So, what do you see as a missed opportunity in the adult industry?
It's just still going back to leadership and
Yep.
and the focus on content. But then I also understand that I guess just more on that is that this industry is very young, and so obviously it's going to go through cycles where we learn,
hmm
um, and we adjust and we evolve.
hmm
And so I think that while those opportunities were missed over the past 25 years,
hmm
I think that maybe we have plenty of time to right the ship and capitalize
hmm
on just coming together as an industry and coming together as an industry with the purpose of making the most money for all of us. Like that's what
Sure.
that's what I always think too is people,
Right.
when they go, you're kind of naive about it. It's all about the bottom line. Well, great, let's make it about the bottom line, but let's
Absolutely.
just get all the good people making a ton of money and
hmm
sell the content.
Yeah.
And so I
Well,
think
when
we'll
it,
do that.
yeah, sorry to interrupt, but
No, no, go ahead.
when it comes right down to it, in any industry, best practices make the most money, and the adult industry is no different, right?
Oh, true, absolutely. You see it because there's I mean the things that we started. I think I had written down that so many of the production ethics and the production, like the code of conduct for producing that I see some
hmm
sites having now. I mean, that's stuff that we did in 2002. I see a lot of sites coming out, and it kind of sometimes it can be a bit frustrating when somebody gets a lot of press and they're like, we treat our models with respect, and that's what sets us apart, and we're different. And I'm
And
like, yeah,
shouldn't you?
well, we've been doing
Shouldn't you?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been doing that since 2000, and doing sort of unscripted and
Right.
just doing things different. Because I did see a lot of producers in San Diego, and some were really great. I mean, Laura Merchant, I think, is amazing.
hmm
What she was doing for Naughty America, but then I saw some producers there where they were doing some extraordinarily shady stuff with models, and
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah,
Some of them are in prison now for good reason, like those
yeah,
girls do porn guys,
yep,
and their sentence couldn't be long enough. Not
no,
not to mention Mr. Jeremy, which we won't get into. But in one of my future episodes, I'll be talking to somebody about that has some interesting insights.
oh, that'll be cool.
So every once in a while, we do break news, Todd. Yanks donates a portion of its proceeds to Call to Safety. Why don't you tell me what Call to Safety is and perhaps explain that relationship?
Yeah, so Call to Safety was is a charitable organization that was founded in the early 70s, and it
hmm
was just initially a call line for people to call in about domestic violence. And now they've adjusted their mission a little bit, and they fight domestic violence and sexual violence.
Good.
Um, and we had decided to look for a charity about 5 or 6 years ago that we wanted to just give $1 of every sale that we make for Yanks and Yanks
hmm
VR to a charity. But what we wanted to do was do it publicly.
Right.
I didn't want to give an anonymous donation. If I'm going to give you money, I want to be able to say that we're giving you money. I wanted to be a real charity. I didn't want to, I think that you could start a charity, you could start an organization, and you could donate
hmm
it to yourself, and then you could donate it to somewhere else. I mean,
Right.
definitely donate it, but I wanted it to go to a real organization that is
hmm
nationally known,
Right.
And they are. And so it took me a year of actually talking to different organizations. Like
Mm-hmm.
one that was incredibly interesting was V-Day, which was like they did the vagina monologues, and they're just like pro woman and all this stuff. And they were
Sure.
just flat out rude to me, which was amazing because I'm like, wow, like here we are doing this. We're 100%
Yeah.
female produced for
I was going
real.
to ask you something. I mean, I would imagine that some of the charities turned you down.
Yeah, I mean, there were some that made sense. One of the things
Mm-hmm.
we started looking at was female circumcision because I'm like, well, what a direct, tie-in that we are primarily a, sort of, solo girl and girl, but it's real orgasms is one of our main focuses. So that's an
Mm-hmm.
interesting segue to here's this this problem where women's and girls' clitorises are being cut off.
Yep.
They refused us, but they had a really good play where they're like, we work in so many countries, so many sort of third world countries, and
Sure.
we get a majority of our money from Christian organizations. And so that if
Yeah.
they knew
I
that
get
you
that.
were getting this money, they'd stop. And
Yeah.
I can't, unless you can duplicate all that money, we can't do it. So I
Sure.
understood that. Some of them were just like, you're porn, you're dirty, you're horrible people without
Yeah.
even looking at what we do.
Aren't we though?
Um, yeah, of course. And, so when I did finally talk to Call of Safety, I had to do an interview with the CEO and talk to the board. And, they were impressed with, we're pro sex worker.
Yep.
Yanks, we advertise as 100% female produced, and we are. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
100% female models, female producers, videographers, our
Mm-hmm.
editors, our content manager. I'm usually, I talk to Billy, my partner, about what we're doing, and so
Mm-hmm.
her input is always there. So it's really a female driven company, and the
Right.
content is female driven. So they really
Sure.
like that, and so we've been working with them for 5 years, and like I
Hmm.
said, one of the things I said is I want to be able to put a link to Call to Safety on the site. I
Right.
want to be able to do a PR if I want to and say Yanks is supporting Call to Safety with a blue link. They were okay with that. So
Great.
that was really good. And I don't know many or if any other companies donate to a charity that isn't, just an industry charity. Not that that's
Adult
bad, but,
specific. Yeah. Yeah.
or adult
Well, that's
specific or one that
yeah.
they organize themselves.
Maybe more should definitely. Do you have any
Absolutely.
kind of a sense of how much you've given them so far?
Um, I think it's probably been, probably like 50 grand, maybe more than that. It's a nice amount.
That's awesome. Well, Todd, I would like to thank you for being our guest today on Adult Site Broker Talk, and I hope we'll get a chance to do this again soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you. My broker tip today is part 6 of how to buy an adult website. Last week we talked about the sales agreement. So now both you and the seller have signed the agreement. What comes next? There needs to be an escrow set up where you send the money, whether it be a one-time payment or a deposit if you're going to be making payments. The seller, for their part, puts any tangible assets into escrow, namely the domains being sold and anything else that can be put into escrow. Your attorney can give you more information on that. We recommend escrow domains for escrows. They're a firm out of Washington, D.C., and no, they're not paying me to say this. I just use them, trust them, and am delighted by the work they've done for us. Either an escrow agreement will be drawn up by them in the case of a custom escrow, or if it's a simple one, it can be set up on their website. Then you, the buyer, the seller, and the broker will be contacted by escrow domains with further instructions, such as wiring information. The escrow is opened, and either the deal closes within a matter of a few days or an inspection period is allowed. It all depends on what the agreement calls for. Whether you need an inspection period really depends on whether there's still some information you need to find out prior to the deal closing. Your broker and your attorney can advise you more on this, and it's on a case-by-case basis. Then the money is transferred, as are the domains, and the deal is closed. Now, in many cases, in fact, most of the time, the seller either stays on board for a period of time to help with the transition or is at least available on an on-call basis to answer questions. This is something most buyers should ask for. But at this point, you pretty much own the website. What do you do now? We'll talk about this subject more next week. And next week we'll be speaking with award-winning trans performer and producer, Jamie Kelly. And that's it for this week's Adult Site Broker Talk. I'd once again like to thank my guest, Todd Spaits. Talk to you again next week on Adult Site Broker Talk. I'm Bruce Friedman.